Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my precious pack, and welcome back once more to VEGA Conflict. Well, more specifically, a set of concepts. As the title most likely states, and you're a no, I want to talk about fleet commanders, the aspects of the game they haven't touched yet, what I want them to do with them moving forwards, and a few more mission-earned fleet commanders for the lower levels or players that don't have the end fleet commanders, as well as to just finish the damage cycle, so we have one for energy, one for kinetic, and one for explosive. Let's hop right into it. First up is a generic kinetic fleet commander. That's the name because I just didn't think of any, and that's how the other two are listed. The only one that actually has a name is Rhea Dage, as you're going to find out. My personal suggestions for a mission-earned FC with a maximum level cap of 70 is as follows. A bonus of 25 or 30% to kinetic weapon damage types. A increase of 100 meters of strafe speed per second, or an additional 1,000 meters per second kinetic weapon projectile speed, with the intention of just pushing them that little bit to make them a little bit more versatile in a larger set of roles. And the unique activation trait. Now, this one was actually fairly interesting when I was thinking about it, because I wanted to do something that wouldn't exactly seem orthodox, and what I came up with was a fleet composition includes 3 destroyer classified ships. The bonus is 25% increase to kinetic weapon reload speed, so you get a 25% boost, so it would be 100% of the value, and then you drop an additional 25% on top of that. Now that's not the reload, the effective reload, that's the actual boost applied to the weapon. I have it in my mind that this fleet commander would be earned for a mission following up with the completion of Clay's mission. The mission would require a player to defeat 10 Demon Corps fleets in order to save the fleet commander from imprisonment. A straight and simple commander, and a way to earn them as well. Now, the second is a little more interesting, and it breaks away from the traditions that we've seen thus far with fleet commanders. Now, what I mean by that? Well, first off, it's Rhea Dage, and quite a few of you may like this. Just gotta get a drink real quick. My suggestion for Rhea is to actually have her be introduced as the first fleet commander with a primary focus on a single ship, the Harvester, as well as give it spawning capabilities with ships that are empowered as she ranks up. Let's have a quick look at the stats I've come up with for the spawn ships, Reapers, as well as a special trait. Now, before we go any further, I see the Harvester as a support-style dreadnought due to its long range, and having spawns kind of sits in tune with that. However, reworking it to include spawn slots doesn't actually seem to make sense to me when we could just add a fleet commander through ranking them up, and, well, as you're going to find out from the stats, they're not exactly on par, because I don't want them to fight above their tier, but I want them to work fairly well at their tier, as well as have a unique trait for their tier, or introduce a player to a trait that you'll see in a later faction. Now, onto the ship details. Spawn ship details, all of the details are locked, well, all of the spawn details are locked to Harvester only, ensuring that Reapers will only spawn if a Harvester is present in a fleet. That is specifically your fleet. It cannot be an ally fleet, so you can't have double spawns on theirs. It has to be your Harvester. Health at level 1, 2,250 hit points. At max rank, level 100, and yes, this will be the first mission-earned FC with a cap of level 100. 6,750 is what I have in mind, so it's about 3 times that of what it is at base. And next up is the interesting part that I figured that quite a few of you would find interesting or entertaining. 1,125 ablative armor regenerating at 10% or 1% per second at level 1. 3,375 ablative armor regenerating at 10% per second at level 100. The intention of adding Ablative is actually explained a little bit further down, and it's to kind of explore what can be done with fleet commanders, as well as regenerating Ablative compared to combat regenerating ablative, and there is a difference between the two, which I will explain in a video dedicated to what I have in mind for that idea. 150 alien damage per second at level 1. 450 alien damage per second at level 100. The weapon is a beam weapon with a fairly quick charge time and short firing cycle with a 360-degree firing arc. 3,000 meter weapon range at all levels ensures that these spawns will have a fairly reliable range, but their range cannot be affected by anything in the fleet, so you cannot use specials or anything like that to boost the range. They're hard-locked, just like zealots and murders. 1,500 meters per second forward speed at all levels. 300 meters per second of strafe speed at all levels. 35 degrees per second of rotation speed at all levels. 10% alien damage resistance at level 1. 50% alien damage resistance at level 100. 100% nebula damage resistance on all levels. And that was for the alien nebula. 10% plasma damage resistance at level 1. 50% plasma damage resistance at level 100. 100% plasma nebula damage resistance at all levels. Spawn limit of 1 with a 10-second respawn timer at level 1. Spawn limit of 4 with a spawn timer of 10 for the respawn timer at level 100. 1 will respawn during the spawning cycle at level 1. 4 will respawn during the spawning cycle at level 100. Reapers will only spawn if the active number is less than the current spawn limit value. So in this case, if you have 4 out, 1 is destroyed, and during the spawn cycle, 1 will be respawned to take the place of the one that you lost, maintaining a maximum number. Spawn ships will be controlled the same way as other spawn ships, for example, the Orator and Zealots, with the triggerable arc, which will send them out to 1,500 meters or bring them back into about 5,000 meters. The unique trait and activation bonus. Fleet composition includes the Harvester, a bonus of 25% range and increase will be applied to all ships in the fleet. The Reaper spawns not being included in that bonus, and that is just to make the fleet commander just a little bit more flexible in certain situations and give long-range support building ships a larger emphasis in the game. And again, that is for all ships. Now, with newer ships, such as with the Valraven, it won't exactly work because they are hard-capped range. So range effects will not bother them, will not increase their maximum range, will not increase their minimum range, or anything like that because of how they're set up. Well, it would technically increase a weapon's minimum range, which could move it through the firing arc, but I mean, it's still got a hard-locked firing arc of 8,000, maximum 4,000 minimum. Give me just a second. Okay. The reason I gave the player Reaper spawned ships an ablative layer but with constant regeneration is because I see them as a living entity and see that as their hide, and I don't see them regenerating that layer through combat, but instead have a passive trait which gives a player a reason to pull them back every now and then to fully regenerate the minor ablative layer. The reasoning behind giving them an ablative layer in the first place was to be the first introduction of ablative armor on spawn ships, but function in a new way other than how the Umbral's ablative functions, which is regeneration through combat. As they destroy ships, they regenerate, they effectively they pull in the debris, and they wear it as armor. Well, in this case, I want it to be seen more as hide, and I only used ablative as an example because it would be a 10% bleed through, but they would still have to get through, and they'd be regenerating constantly, be a living hide. And it would make sense in some regards, but naturally I want to discuss it with all of you. Rhea Dage would be earned from a mission involving attacking and defeating 10 Harvester grind targets, which currently are not in the game, as we know. Well, as far as I know. Haven't seen any, I haven't heard anything about when they're being introduced still. I don't think that there's any plans short-term right now for them to be introduced. But the longer they delay that, the more that we can kind of push for new fleet commanders, such as Rhea in this case, So when we do get the grind targets, those of you that grind out the harvester, you'll have something more than what I had when I initially started with it, which would be just a novel feature to go along with it as you level her up. Okay, and I wanted to use this idea to also explore passive ablative regeneration, though not on Umbral, but on the vessels of the alien infection, with the intention of adding a complete alien faction to the game as a later idea at tier 6.5, with built-in ablative that constantly regenerates compared to the more aggressive Umbral strain, which is regeneration through combat. Though that is a thought for another concept. Okay, let's go ahead and let's take a look at the final one. The final fleet commander I have thought of is a generic Dreadnought fleet commander, and yes, the primary focus of this fleet commander is Dreadnoughts. Most of the abilities for this commander will be locked to the Dreadnought class, similar to Rhea's abilities being focused around a Harvester. Here are my suggested stats for this fleet commander. Up to 75% increase to armor health on Dreadnoughts at level 100. Up to 75% increase to defense types on Dreadnoughts at level 100. Now defense means shells, shields, screens, and ablative armor, as well as carapaces and whatever the next set's going to be for the Pharmacon and the Altarians. And a increase of 75% increased weapon damage per second on Dreadnought's weapons, specifically, at level 100. Unique trait as well as the activation and bonus. Fleet composition includes one Dreadnought class ship, a bonus of 25% increased reload speed and charge speed of all weapons for all ships, with the exception of for the Dreadnought, meaning that any support ships you have will be more lethal because they'll be able to reload more quickly, recharge the beam weapons more quickly. Overall, it will just increase their damage per second. Well, it'll allow them to reload that little bit faster to be able to fire again. This commander would be earned through an event store with the typical price of 15 million. Just like with Rhea, I want to push for a few fleet commanders where they focus on certain ships or certain ship classes. Fleet commanders don't always have to give increased stat bonuses though. As with Rhea, some commanders could bring something different to a ship other than increased stats in some regards. It could be interesting to explore this concept further in the future, but that is all I have for now. Actually, I want to discuss this with all of you down below in the comment section, so for each of you that actually comes around the channel for the concept ideas, go ahead, watch the video through. Well, by now you've already watched it through. Go ahead and let's get a discussion going in the comment section. What do you think of new fleet commanders, and what would you like to see with the new fleet commanders? What do you think of the ones I've suggested here? What stats would you change, or what would you make a little bit more simple in terms of how it functions? As such, I would like to suggest a different name for the ablative layer that is on the Reaper spawns, because it shouldn't be called ablative, because ablative is an entirely different entity and it regenerates through combat, whereas this is a passively regenerating armor layer that is similar to ablative in how it functions and how it behaves, but it has a different regeneration value. Instead of combat damage, it would be passive. So what would you name it? Because I wouldn't want to just call it a hide or something like that. I would want it to seem like something interesting that you'd expect some type of insect to have that's not a carapace, but something else. A husk, possibly? But regardless, that's going to be it for now, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this concept idea. Hope you enjoyed it. I enjoy making them. And be safe out in the void. Happy hunting. And as always, I'll see you later.